The gleaming floors of Liberty International Airport reflected the morning sunlight as Lisa Chen, a seasoned flight attendant of 15 years, watched the usual hustle and bustle of travelers. What started as an ordinary Tuesday morning was about to become one of the most memorable days of her career, though not for the reasons she might have expected. Among the crowd, a tall, elegant woman in a cream-colored designer suit made her way toward the first-class check-in counter. Despite her understated appearance, there was something distinctly remarkable about her presence, the kind of quiet confidence that came from years in the public eye. This was Victoria Reynolds, a former international model turned philanthropist, and the wife of real estate mogul Robert Reynolds. Sandra Morris, the newly appointed check-in supervisor, was having a particularly stressful morning. 3 staff members had called in sick, the computer system was acting up, and the line of impatient travelers seemed endless. When Victoria approached her counter, Sandra barely looked up from her computer screen. "Passport and booking reference, please," Sandra muttered, her fingers tapping impatiently on the keyboard. Victoria quietly placed her documents on the counter, maintaining her composure despite the less-than-warm welcome. Sandra glanced at the passport, then at Victoria, then back at the passport again. A flicker of recognition crossed her face, quickly replaced by something else, a hint of disdain. "Oh, Mrs. Reynolds," she said, her voice carrying just enough volume for nearby passengers to hear. "I'll need to verify your travel authorization. These days, we have to be extra careful with certain travelers." The implications in Sandra's tone were clear to everyone within earshot. Several passengers looked up from their phones, and a few even started recording discreetly. Victoria remained poised, though a slight tension appeared in her shoulders. "My documentation is in order," Victoria replied softly, her slight European accent evident but refined. "I've flown this route many times before." Sandra made a show of scrutinizing every page of Victoria's passport, holding up the line even further. "Well, you know how it is with international marriages these days. We can't be too careful about immigration status, even for celebrities." She emphasized the last word with barely concealed mockery. Lisa Chen, who had been observing the situation unfold, felt her chest tighten with discomfort. As a first-generation immigrant herself, she recognized the subtle discrimination playing out before her eyes. She began making her way toward the check-in counter, knowing this situation needed to be addressed. Meanwhile, Sandra continued her unnecessary interrogation. "And what exactly is the purpose of your travel today? Business or pleasure?" she asked, despite the clearly marked business visa in Victoria's passport. Victoria maintained her dignity, answering each question with grace, but the humiliation was evident in her eyes. Other passengers in line began to shuffle uncomfortably, witnessing the clear abuse of authority. What Sandra didn't realize was that at that very moment, Robert Reynolds was walking through the airport's main entrance. He had initially planned to simply drop his wife off, but something had made him decide to park the car and come inside, a decision that would prove significant in the next few moments. Lisa had just reached the counter when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Is there a problem here?" The deep, authoritative tone belonged to Robert Reynolds, whose commanding presence immediately drew all eyes in the vicinity. Sandra's face lost its color as she recognized the billionaire businessman whose name regularly graced the covers of financial magazines. Robert Reynolds wasn't just Victoria's husband, he was also one of the airport's major investors and a member of the board of directors for the airline. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor," Robert stated calmly, though his eyes conveyed the seriousness of the situation. "And I believe we need to have a discussion about professional conduct and discrimination policies in this airport." Lisa watched as Sandra's superior confidence crumbled. The supervisor who had been so quick to exercise her authority was now stammering apologies, but Robert held up his hand to stop her. "I'm not the one you should be apologizing to," he said firmly, looking at his wife. The love and respect in his eyes were evident to everyone watching. "The way you've treated my wife, the way you might treat any traveler, is unacceptable." By now, a small crowd had gathered, and several phones were recording the scene. The airport's head of operations, having been alerted to the situation, was already hurrying toward the check-in counter. As the story began spreading through social media channels, it would serve as a powerful reminder about the importance of treating every person with dignity and respect, regardless of their background. The incident would later become a catalyst for the airport's comprehensive review of its customer service training programs and anti-discrimination policies. But in that moment, as Victoria and Robert Reynolds walked hand in hand toward the security checkpoint, Lisa Chen smiled to herself. Sometimes, justice arrived in unexpected ways, and today's events would surely be remembered by everyone who witnessed them. The aftermath of the incident at Liberty International Airport unfolded rapidly. Within hours, shaky smartphone footage of the confrontation had spread across social media platforms, garnering millions of views. The hashtag #RespectForAll began trending, with people sharing their own experiences of discrimination at various airports. Back in her office, Jennifer Thompson, the airport's director of operations, sat behind her desk with a troubled expression. The incident had escalated far beyond a simple customer service issue. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing since morning, and her email inbox was flooded with messages from media outlets seeking comments. "This is exactly what we've been trying to prevent," she said to David Parker, the head of human resources, who sat across from her desk. "One person's actions have put our entire airport's reputation at risk." The security footage from the check-in counter played on Jennifer's computer screen. She watched Sandra Morris's behavior with growing concern, noting how the situation could have been handled differently at multiple points. The footage clearly showed Victoria Reynolds' dignified responses despite the provocations. "We need to take immediate action," David suggested, his years of experience evident in his measured tone. "But we also need to understand why this happened. Sandra has been with us for 5 years, and her record was spotless until now." Meanwhile, in the airport's break room, Lisa Chen was sharing her perspective with her colleagues. The room was buzzing with discussions about the morning's events, and Lisa had become an unexpected authority on the situation, having witnessed it firsthand. "The thing that struck me most," Lisa explained to her attentive audience, "was how Mrs. Reynolds handled herself. There was no screaming, no threats, just quiet dignity. And Mr. Reynolds? He could have demanded Sandra's immediate dismissal, but instead, he asked for systemic changes." One of the younger flight attendants, Priya Kumar, spoke up. "My parents faced similar treatment when they first came to this country. It's not always as obvious as what happened today, but it hurts just the same." The conversation was interrupted by an announcement over the staff intercom system, calling for an emergency all-hands meeting in the main conference room. As employees filed in, there was a palpable tension in the air. Nobody had ever seen the conference room this full: ground crew, flight attendants, security personnel, and administrative staff all gathered together. Jennifer Thompson stood at the podium, her usual confident demeanor somewhat subdued. "By now, you've all heard about or witnessed what happened this morning," she began. "What you might not know is that this incident has sparked a larger conversation about how we treat our passengers, all our passengers." She played several clips from news channels that were already covering the story. The Reynolds hadn't given any official statements, but their dignity in the face of discrimination had struck a chord with people worldwide. Social media was filled with similar stories from travelers who had faced prejudice at various airports. "Starting tomorrow," Jennifer announced, "we're implementing mandatory sensitivity training for all staff members. But more importantly, we're creating a task force to review and revise our customer service policies. We want volunteers from every department to participate." Lisa found herself raising her hand, along with several others, including Priya. This was a chance to make real changes, to ensure that what happened to Victoria Reynolds wouldn't happen to anyone else. As the meeting concluded, Jennifer pulled Lisa aside. "Ms. Chen, I understand you witnessed the entire incident. Would you be willing to lead the first task force session? Your perspective would be invaluable. In another part of the city, Victoria and Robert Reynolds sat in their penthouse apartment, watching the news coverage of the incident. Victoria's phone buzzed continuously with messages of support from friends, family, and strangers alike. Perhaps some good will come from this, Victoria said softly, looking at her husband. If it helps prevent someone else from experiencing similar treatment. Robert squeezed her hand. I've already spoken with the airport board. They're not just implementing new training programs, they're creating a comprehensive anti-discrimination policy that will serve as a model for other airports. That evening, as Lisa Chen drove home from her shift, she reflected on how a single incident had sparked such widespread change. She thought about Sandra Morris, who had been suspended pending an investigation, and hoped that this would be a learning experience rather than just a punishment. The next day would bring new challenges, reporters seeking interviews, meetings with the newly formed task force, and the continuous work of running one of the country's busiest airports. But for now, there was a sense that something important had begun, a conversation that needed to happen, changes that needed to be made. As she pulled into her driveway, Lisa's phone lit up with a notification. The airport's official social media accounts had just posted a statement: "We are committed to creating an environment of respect, dignity, and inclusion for all travelers. Today's incident does not reflect our values, and we are taking immediate steps to ensure it never happens again." The morning sunlight streamed through the windows of the airport's largest training room as employees filed in for the first day of the new sensitivity training program. The room buzzed with nervous energy as staff members from different departments settled into their seats. At the front of the room, Lisa Chen arranged her presentation materials, occasionally glancing at the door as more people entered. Among those arriving was Sandra Morris, who had been reinstated on a probationary basis after completing preliminary counseling sessions. Her usual confident stride was replaced by a more subdued demeanor as she quietly took a seat in the back row. The whispers that followed her entrance gradually died down as Jennifer Thompson stepped up to introduce the day's session. "Before we begin," Jennifer announced, "we have a surprise guest speaker." The door opened, and Victoria Reynolds walked in, accompanied by her husband. The room fell silent. This was their first public appearance at the airport since the incident, and nobody had expected them to be part of the training program. Victoria approached the podium with the same grace she had shown during the confrontation. "Good morning," she began, her voice warm and steady. "I'm not here to point fingers or assign blame. I'm here because I believe in second chances and the power of understanding." She shared stories from her early days in America, the small daily challenges, the misconceptions she faced, and the people who had helped her along the way. As she spoke, Sandra Morris seemed to sink deeper into her chair, but Victoria's next words caught everyone by surprise. "Ms. Morris," Victoria said, looking directly at Sandra, "would you join me up here?" The room collectively held its breath as Sandra slowly made her way to the front, her face a mixture of embarrassment and uncertainty. "I want to thank you," Victoria continued, shocking everyone present. "Because of what happened that day, this airport is making changes that will help countless travelers. Sometimes our mistakes can lead to the greatest improvements." Sandra's eyes welled with tears. "I've spent weeks thinking about my actions," she said, her voice trembling. "I had no idea how much my own biases were affecting my behavior. I'm truly sorry, Mrs. Reynolds." Robert Reynolds, who had been quietly observing from the side, stepped forward. "The real test of character isn't in never making mistakes," he said, addressing the entire room. "It's in how we learn from them." The training session that followed was unlike anything the airport staff had experienced before. Instead of dry presentations and rulebooks, it became a forum for honest discussions about prejudice, privilege, and the responsibility that came with their positions. Lisa shared her own experiences as an Asian American in the aviation industry, while Priya Kumar spoke about the subtle discrimination her family had faced. Other employees began opening up about their own stories, creating a powerful dialogue that transcended job titles and departments. During the lunch break, Lisa noticed Sandra sitting alone in the cafeteria. Remembering her own moments of isolation early in her career, she decided to join her. "The hardest part," Sandra said as Lisa sat down, "is facing yourself in the mirror after you realize what you've done. I've always prided myself on being professional, but watching that video of myself." She trailed off, pushing her food around on her plate. "Growth isn't comfortable," Lisa replied gently. "But it's worth it. The fact that you're here, trying to learn and change, that matters." Meanwhile, in another part of the airport, Robert Reynolds was meeting with the board of directors. The incident had sparked a larger conversation about systemic changes needed across all their properties. They were discussing the implementation of a new passenger rights charter that would set industry standards for fair treatment. Victoria had joined a group of international travelers in the main terminal, listening to their stories and experiences. Her presence had created an unexpected atmosphere of openness, with people sharing both positive and negative encounters they'd had while traveling. As the day progressed, the training session evolved into a collaborative workshop. Employees worked in groups to develop new protocols for handling difficult situations, focusing on communication, empathy, and cultural awareness. Sandra, drawing from her recent experience, offered valuable insights into how internal biases could unconsciously affect behavior. By late afternoon, the energy in the room had transformed from nervous tension to productive enthusiasm. The staff had moved beyond simply following rules to understanding the human impact of their actions. They were no longer just airport employees, they were becoming advocates for change. Jennifer Thompson watched the interactions with satisfaction. What had started as a crisis management response had become something much more meaningful. She made notes for future training sessions, recognizing that this was just the beginning of a longer journey. As the session concluded, Victoria and Robert prepared to leave. Sandra approached them one last time, this time with a different kind of confidence, not from authority, but from humility and growth. "Thank you for giving me a chance to learn from this," she said. "I promise to do better." Victoria smiled warmly. "We all learn and grow together," she replied, embracing Sandra in a gesture that symbolized everything the day had been about. Outside the airport, the sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors as employees from the first training session departed. They left carrying not just new protocols and procedures, but a deeper understanding of their role in creating a more inclusive and welcoming environment for all travelers. 1 month after the initial incident, Liberty International Airport had undergone a remarkable transformation. The changes weren't just in policies and procedures, there was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere itself. The morning rush hour took on a different tone as passengers moved through the terminal, greeted by staff members who seemed more attentive and understanding than ever before. The security checkpoint, once a source of tension for many travelers, had become an example of efficiency combined with respect. Officer James Rodriguez, a veteran TSA agent, demonstrated this new approach as he assisted an elderly couple from India who were visiting their grandchildren for the first time in America. "Take your time, sir," James said patiently, explaining each step of the security process in clear, simple terms. "Your medication can stay in your carry-on, and I'll help you with your shoes." The couple's grateful smiles reflected the impact of such small but meaningful gestures. Sandra Morris, who had once been at the center of controversy, was now working alongside Lisa Chen to implement the airport's new customer service initiatives. Today, they were preparing for a special event, the airport's first Cultural Awareness Day, designed to celebrate the diversity of both staff and travelers. "Did you see the news this morning?" Lisa asked Sandra as they hung colorful banners in the main terminal. "Our training program is being adopted by 3 other major airports. They're calling it the Liberty Model." Sandra paused, looking at the transformed space around them. "It's strange to think that my biggest mistake led to all this," she reflected. Yesterday, I helped a family who reminded me so much of Mrs. Reynolds. The difference was, this time, I saw them as people first, not just passengers. The terminal had been transformed into a vibrant celebration of international cultures. Food stalls offered samples of cuisines from around the world, while cultural performances were scheduled throughout the day. Airport staff members had volunteered to share aspects of their heritage, creating an atmosphere of learning and appreciation. Jennifer Thompson stood near the central information desk, observing the preparations with pride. The past month had seen a 40% decrease in passenger complaints and a significant improvement in employee satisfaction scores. But more importantly, there was a tangible change in how people interacted with each other. "Mrs. Thompson?" A young voice caught her attention. It was Amy, the daughter of one of the custodial staff members. "Can I show you my part in the cultural presentation?" Jennifer smiled, following the excited child to a display about Filipino culture. Amy's father, Ben, had worked at the airport for 15 years but had never before felt comfortable sharing his heritage at work. Now, here was his daughter, proudly wearing a traditional Filipino dress and explaining the meaning behind each element to anyone who would listen. As the day progressed, the terminal filled with travelers who found themselves unexpectedly participating in the cultural celebration. A delayed flight, usually a source of frustration, became an opportunity for passengers to explore the various cultural exhibitions and engage with the airport community. Victoria and Robert Reynolds made an unannounced visit, blending in with the crowd as they explored the celebrations. They stopped at various displays, genuinely interested in learning about different cultures and traditions. When they reached Sandra's station, where she was helping coordinate the event logistics, the interaction was warm and natural. "This is incredible," Victoria commented, gesturing to the bustling terminal. To see how something positive could emerge from that day. Sandra's eyes shone with pride and purpose. "We're not just changing policies," she explained. "We're changing mindsets, including my own. Every day, I learn something new about the people who pass through these gates." The afternoon brought a surprise performance in the central atrium. Airport staff members from different departments had prepared a multicultural musical showcase. The impromptu audience of travelers and employees gathered around, many recording the performance on their phones. Priya Kumar, who had been instrumental in organizing the cultural activities, watched as her colleagues performed. "This is more than just a PR exercise," she told Lisa. "Look at how people are connecting, learning from each other. This is real change." In the security area, James Rodriguez dealt with a potentially tense situation when a passenger became agitated about removing his turban. Instead of escalating the situation, James demonstrated the new approach they had learned. He respectfully explained the security requirements while offering a private screening area and ensuring the passenger's dignity was maintained throughout the process. As evening approached, the cultural celebrations began to wind down, but their impact lingered. Travelers shared their experiences on social media, spreading the message of inclusion beyond the airport's walls. The hashtag Liberty Welcomes All started trending, accompanied by photos and stories from the day's events. Jennifer Thompson gathered the key staff members for a brief meeting at the end of the day. "What we've achieved here goes beyond customer service," she said. "We're showing that an airport can be more than just a transit point. It can be a place where cultures meet, where understanding grows, and where everyone is treated with dignity." The cleaning crew began taking down the decorations, but the spirit of the day remained. Sandra stayed late to help, working alongside Ben, Amy's father. As they cleaned, they shared stories about their families, their dreams, and their journeys, conversations that would have seemed unlikely just a month ago. Outside, the evening flights took off against a purple sky, carrying passengers who had experienced something unexpected during their transit through Liberty International. Many would share their stories, contributing to a growing reputation of an airport that had transformed a moment of discrimination into an opportunity for lasting change. As Lisa Chen gathered her belongings to head home, she found a note on her desk from Victoria Reynolds: "Thank you for helping turn a difficult moment into a movement for positive change. This is just the beginning." The story of Liberty International Airport's transformation had begun attracting national attention. As the morning sun cast long shadows across the terminal, a crew from National News Network was setting up their equipment near Gate C4. They were preparing to film a special feature about the airport's remarkable journey from controversy to exemplary workplace culture. Angela Rivera, the veteran news reporter known for her hard-hitting investigative pieces, watched the morning operations with keen interest. She had initially come expecting to find surface-level changes and corporate PR spin. Instead, she was witnessing something far more authentic. "Ready in 5 minutes, Ms. Rivera," her cameraman called out. Before they could begin filming, a commotion near the check-in counters caught everyone's attention. A young mother was struggling with 3 small children, a mountain of luggage, and a wheelchair-bound elderly parent. Just months ago, such a scene might have caused irritation among staff and fellow travelers. Today, the response was markedly different. Without hesitation, Sandra Morris, who was passing by on her way to a meeting, immediately approached the family. "Let me help you with that," she offered, signaling to her colleagues. Within moments, a small team had assembled to assist the family. Angela watched as Sandra coordinated with her teammates, efficiently handling the luggage while maintaining a genuine conversation with the grandmother in the wheelchair. The news crew, sensing an authentic moment, began filming. "This wasn't planned," Angela murmured to her producer. "This is real." Meanwhile, in the airport's administrative offices, Jennifer Thompson was reviewing the latest customer satisfaction surveys with Robert Reynolds, who had taken a personal interest in the airport's progress as both an investor and advocate. "These numbers are remarkable," Robert noted, scanning the reports. "But what impresses me most are the personal stories. People are sharing their experiences at Liberty on social media, not because they're asked to, but because they want to." Jennifer smiled, pulling up a folder on her computer. "Have you seen this?" She played a viral video from last week, showing a group of airport staff members helping a young man propose to his girlfriend by coordinating a surprise welcome message across multiple flight gates. The video had garnered millions of views. "It's not just about avoiding discrimination anymore," Jennifer explained. "The staff has taken ownership of creating positive experiences. They're proud to be part of this community." Back in the terminal, Angela Rivera was interviewing Lisa Chen about her role in the airport's transformation. The conversation was repeatedly interrupted by staff members and travelers stopping to share their own stories. "The most significant change," Lisa explained to the camera, "isn't in our procedures or policies. It's in how we see each other. Every passenger who walks through these doors has a story, a purpose, a life beyond just being a traveler." As if to illustrate her point, a commotion of joy erupted nearby as an elderly couple emerged from the arrivals gate. They were greeted by a large family, complete with children holding handmade welcome signs. The scene caught the attention of everyone in the vicinity, including the news crew. "That's Mr. and Mrs. Patel," Sandra explained, having finished helping the young mother and her family. "Their grandson graduated from medical school yesterday. They flew 20 hours to be here for the ceremony." Angela was struck by how Sandra knew these details about random passengers. "You seem to know a lot about the travelers," she observed. "We make it our business to know," Sandra replied, her voice carrying a hint of emotion. "After what happened with Mrs. Reynolds, I learned that every passenger is more than just a name on a boarding pass. They're someone's grandparents, someone's children, someone's hope." The news feature expanded beyond its original scope as more stories emerged throughout the day. They captured footage of James Rodriguez teaching a group of young security officers about cultural sensitivity while maintaining protocol. They filmed Priya Kumar organizing an impromptu translation service for a lost Russian family. In the afternoon, Victoria Reynolds made a surprise appearance, this time as part of a new airport initiative to mentor young professionals interested in international business. The cameras captured her walking through the terminal with a group of aspiring entrepreneurs, sharing her experiences and insights. When she spotted Sandra giving directions to an elderly traveler, Victoria paused her tour. The two women exchanged warm smiles and a brief hug, a moment that spoke volumes about forgiveness and growth. "Mrs. Reynolds," Angela called out, unable to resist the opportunity. "What made you decide to become so involved with the airport's transformation?" Victoria considered the question carefully. "Sometimes, the most powerful changes come from our most challenging moments," she replied. "What happened to me was unfortunate, but the response, the commitment to real change, that's what matters. This airport has become a model for how institutions can learn and grow from their mistakes." As the day wound down, Angela found herself with more material than she could fit into a single feature. The story had evolved from a simple piece about workplace reform into a powerful narrative about human connection and institutional change. The final scene they filmed was of the sunset streaming through the terminal's western windows, illuminating a new art installation, a wall of photographs showing hundreds of smiling faces, staff members, travelers, and airport workers, all part of the Liberty International community. Lisa Chen stood beside Angela as they watched the camera crew pack up. "You know," Lisa said, "when we started this journey, we thought we were just fixing a problem. Instead, we created something entirely new, a place where everyone truly belongs." The evening announcements echoed through the terminal, announcing departures and arrivals in multiple languages. Each announcement ended with the airport's new signature phrase, "Welcome to Liberty International Airport, where every journey matters, and everyone belongs." 6 months after the incident that sparked a nationwide conversation about airport culture, Liberty International was hosting its first-ever Airport Community Summit. Airport executives and staff from across the country had gathered to learn about what the media had dubbed the Liberty Revolution. The main conference hall buzzed with excitement as representatives from over 50 airports filled the seats. At the registration desk, Sandra Morris and Lisa Chen greeted arrivals with welcome packets, their confident smiles reflecting how far they'd come from that fateful morning. "Can you believe this?" Lisa whispered to Sandra as they watched another group of airport officials enter. "A year ago, we were just trying to get through our daily shifts. Now we're teaching others how to transform their airports." The summit's opening ceremony began with a powerful video montage showing the airport's journey. The footage included snippets from the original incident, but focused primarily on the positive changes that followed. When the lights came up, Jennifer Thompson took the stage. "Welcome to Liberty International," she began, her voice carrying across the hushed audience. "What you're about to learn isn't just about new policies or procedures. It's about changing the very soul of how airports operate." In the front row, Victoria and Robert Reynolds sat quietly, proud witnesses to the impact of their decision to turn a negative experience into a catalyst for change. Victoria had become an unofficial ambassador for the airport's transformation, and today she would share her story once again. As Victoria approached the podium, she carried with her a thick folder of letters. "These," she explained, holding up the folder, "are messages I've received from travelers around the world. They share their own stories of discrimination, but more importantly, they share their hopes for change." The day's sessions covered various aspects of the Liberty model. James Rodriguez led a workshop on security procedures that maintained both safety and dignity. Priya Kumar presented strategies for creating inclusive spaces within airport environments. But it was Sandra Morris's session that caught everyone's attention. "I was the person who made the mistake that started all this," Sandra began her presentation, her voice steady despite the emotion behind her words. "Today, I'm going to share not just what we learned, but how we learned it." During the lunch break, attendees explored the terminal, witnessing firsthand how the changes had been implemented. They saw the new multi-faith prayer rooms, the cultural exchange corners, and the community bulletin boards filled with stories and photos of staff and travelers. One of the visiting directors, William Hayes from Chicago O'Hare, pulled Jennifer aside. "I was skeptical when I came here," he admitted. "I thought this was all for show. But watching your staff interact with travelers, it's genuine. How did you manage such a deep cultural shift?" Jennifer smiled, gesturing to the diverse group of Liberty staff members mingling with the guests. "We stopped trying to manage change from the top down," she explained. "Instead, we empowered our staff to lead the transformation themselves." The afternoon sessions focused on practical implementation strategies. Lisa led a workshop on building effective communication channels between different airport departments. The participation was enthusiastic, with attendees sharing their own challenges and brainstorming solutions together. During a coffee break, Victoria found herself in conversation with a group of airport managers from across the country. "The most powerful thing you can do," she advised them, "is to listen to your staff and your travelers. Real change starts with understanding." As the day progressed, the summit evolved from a formal conference into a collaborative think tank. Ideas flowed freely, and new connections were formed. Airport managers who had once seen each other as competitors were now partners in a shared mission of transformation. The evening session included a panel discussion featuring some of Liberty's regular travelers. Among them was Mrs. Patel, the grandmother who had flown in for her grandson's graduation months ago. She had since become a frequent flyer, visiting her growing family. "Before, I was always nervous about traveling alone," Mrs. Patel shared with the audience. "Now, coming to Liberty feels like coming home. The staff knows me, helps me, makes me feel welcome. This is how every airport should be." The summit concluded with a ceremony celebrating the airport's achievements. Awards were presented to staff members who had shown exceptional commitment to the new values. Sandra received special recognition for her journey from being part of the problem to becoming a key driver of the solution. As the visitors prepared to leave, many of them already making plans to implement similar changes at their own airports, Jennifer gathered her core team for a private moment of reflection. "What we've built here isn't just a better airport," she told them. "We've created a blueprint for change that can transform the entire industry. But remember, this is just the beginning." Later that evening, as the cleaning crew prepared the terminal for another busy day, Lisa found Sandra standing by the large windows, watching planes take off into the night sky. "Penny for your thoughts?" Lisa asked, joining her colleague. Sandra turned, her eyes reflecting the runway lights. "I was just thinking about that morning with Mrs. Reynolds. How something that started with fear and prejudice turned into all of this." She gestured to the space around them. "We're not just moving people from place to place anymore. We're changing how they experience the journey." Outside, the last of the summit attendees' cars were pulling away from the terminal. Tomorrow, they would return to their own airports, carrying with them the seeds of change that had first taken root at Liberty International. The story that began with one act of discrimination had grown into a movement that promised to transform air travel for generations to come. The terminal's night lights cast a warm glow as another announcement echoed through the nearly empty space: "Welcome to Liberty International Airport, where every journey matters, and everyone belongs." 1 year after the incident that transformed Liberty International Airport, the terminal was adorned with anniversary celebrations. Banners showcasing the airport's journey hung from the ceiling, and a special photo exhibition lined the walkways, documenting the remarkable changes of the past year. The morning began with an unexpected announcement over the airport's intercom system. Jennifer Thompson's voice filled the terminal. "Today marks 1 year since we began our journey of transformation. To celebrate, we have a surprise for all travelers passing through Liberty International today." Throughout the terminal, airport staff began distributing small blue pins to passengers. Each pin bore the airport's new symbol, a globe embraced by helping hands, along with the words, "Where everyone belongs." The gesture was simple, but its impact was profound. Near Gate B12, an elderly traveler named Mrs. Wu struggled with her tablet, trying to video call her granddaughter. Sandra Morris, who was passing by, noticed her distress. Without hesitation, she approached, offering assistance. As she helped Mrs. Wu connect with her family, she reflected on how different her reactions had become over the past year. "You are all so kind here," Mrs. Wu said, tears in her eyes as she successfully connected with her granddaughter. "I fly through many airports, but only here do I feel like family." Meanwhile, in the airport's main conference room, Victoria Reynolds was leading a mentoring session with new airport staff members. Her regular visits to the airport had evolved into a formal program, where she shared her experiences and wisdom with others. "The most important thing to remember," Victoria told the attentive group, "is that behind every passport, every ticket, every frustrated sigh or tired face, there's a human story. Our job isn't just to move people from point A to point B, it's to be part of their journey." The airport's transformation had caught the attention of international aviation authorities. Today, a delegation from the International Air Transport Association was visiting to study the Liberty model. Lisa Chen had been assigned as their guide, showcasing the various initiatives that had made the airport a global benchmark for customer service. "What impresses us most," commented one of the delegates, "is how organic these changes feel. This isn't just about following new rules, your staff genuinely seems to care." Lisa smiled, remembering the journey. "That's because we learned that real change doesn't come from manuals or protocols. It comes from changing hearts and minds." In the security area, James Rodriguez was demonstrating the airport's new approach to cultural sensitivity during security checks. The process was still thorough, but now it was conducted with understanding and respect. Travelers who once dreaded security screenings now moved through with ease, their dignity intact. The afternoon brought a special event in the central atrium. The airport had organized a Stories of Liberty gathering, where travelers and staff could share their experiences. The first speaker was a young woman named Aisha, who had been inspired by the airport's transformation to pursue a career in aviation. "I used to feel out of place in airports," Aisha shared, adjusting her hijab. "But here at Liberty, I saw how things could be different. Now, I want to be part of making that difference in other airports too." As the stories continued, Sandra found herself moved to tears by one particular account. A father described how the airport staff had helped his autistic son navigate the overwhelming airport environment during their monthly visits to a specialist in another city. "What we've created here," Sandra whispered to Lisa, "it's bigger than just fixing past mistakes. We're showing the world what's possible when we lead with empathy." The day's celebrations included a surprise visit from Robert Reynolds, who had brought exciting news. The Liberty model was being adopted by a major international airport alliance, meaning the principles developed here would soon influence airports across the globe. Jennifer gathered her team for an impromptu meeting to share the news. The small break room could barely contain the excited staff members as they heard about their impact on international aviation. "But remember," Jennifer cautioned, "with greater influence comes greater responsibility. We need to ensure that what we've built here remains authentic and continues to grow." As evening approached, the airport's atmosphere remained jubilant. The photo exhibition had drawn crowds throughout the day, with many travelers stopping to read the stories behind each image. One photo, in particular, captured attention. It showed Sandra and Victoria embracing during the Cultural Awareness Day, symbolizing the power of forgiveness and transformation. Near the end of her shift, Sandra found herself assisting a young mother struggling with twins at the check-in counter. The scene reminded her of her past self, but her response was worlds apart from that fateful day a year ago. "Let me help you," she said warmly, going beyond her official duties to ensure the family's comfort. "I remember my own first flight with children. It can be overwhelming." As the day wound down, the cleaning crew began removing the anniversary decorations, but they couldn't erase the spirit of celebration that had permeated the airport. The last flight of the day was preparing to depart, and as passengers boarded, each one wore their blue pin proudly. Lisa and Sandra stood at the window, watching the plane taxi away. "You know what's amazing?" Lisa mused. "A year ago, we thought we were just fixing a problem. Instead, we created a movement." The terminal's lights dimmed for the night, but the glow of transformation remained. On the wall, a new plaque had been installed, bearing words that summed up their journey. "At Liberty International Airport, we don't just connect flights, we connect hearts, stories, and lives. Welcome home." As the night shift began their rounds, the last announcement of the day echoed through the quiet terminal: "Thank you for being part of our journey. At Liberty International, every story matters, every person belongs, and every day brings new opportunities to make a difference." 2 years after the incident that sparked a global conversation about airport culture, Liberty International Airport was hosting its most significant event yet, the Global Aviation Inclusivity Conference. Representatives from airports worldwide had gathered to witness firsthand the lasting impact of what had become known as the Liberty Effect. The terminal hummed with an electric energy as delegates from 6 continents moved through the spaces that had become legendary in the aviation industry. The same check-in counter where Victoria Reynolds had once faced discrimination now stood as a symbol of transformation, complete with a small plaque commemorating the moment that changed everything. Jennifer Thompson stood at the podium in the packed conference center, surveying the audience with quiet pride. 2 years ago, she began, "A single incident forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about our institution. Today, we don't just process passengers, we honor their stories, their dignity, and their humanity." In the front row, Sandra Morris sat beside Victoria Reynolds, their friendship a testament to the power of growth and forgiveness. Sandra had recently been promoted to Director of Customer Experience, using her own journey as a foundation for training new staff members. "Our next speaker," Jennifer announced, "is someone who needs no introduction in the aviation world. Please welcome Victoria Reynolds, who will share her thoughts on sustaining cultural change in our industry." As Victoria took the stage, a spontaneous standing ovation erupted. Her grace under pressure 2 years ago had set in motion changes that now affected millions of travelers worldwide. "Thank you," she began, once the applause subsided. "But today, I'm not here to talk about what happened to me. I'm here to talk about what happened because of all of you." She gestured to the airport staff seated throughout the audience. These individuals took a moment of shame and turned it into an opportunity for growth. They showed us that true change isn't about avoiding mistakes, it's about learning from them and becoming better. Meanwhile, in the terminal, Lisa Chen was leading a group of international airport executives on a tour. They stopped at the newly unveiled Wall of Connections, a digital installation showing real-time stories of travelers connecting through Liberty International. "Look at this," Lisa pointed to one of the screens. "Mr. Patel, who we helped 2 years ago, just welcomed his 4th grandchild. He flies through here every month now, and every staff member knows his story." The executives watched as James Rodriguez, still heading security operations, demonstrated their renowned cultural sensitivity protocols. A young Muslim woman was going through security, and the respect and dignity with which she was treated brought tears to several observers' eyes. Back in the conference hall, Robert Reynolds was sharing the business impact of the Liberty model. "Our investment in human dignity," he explained, "has resulted in a 200% increase in customer satisfaction, a 60% reduction in complaints, and most importantly, a complete transformation in how people perceive air travel." During the lunch break, Sandra found herself surrounded by airport managers eager to learn from her experience. "The hardest part," she told them, "isn't implementing new policies. It's maintaining the genuine commitment to seeing each traveler as a human being with their own story." The afternoon sessions focused on the future. Priya Kumar, now heading the airport's innovation department, presented their latest initiative, a global network of airports committed to the Liberty principles of inclusivity and respect. "We're not just changing airports," Priya explained. We're changing how people experience the world. When someone feels welcome and respected while traveling, they carry that positive energy to their destination. As the conference drew to a close, Jennifer gathered her core team, Sandra, Lisa, James, and Priya, in her office. On her desk sat a prestigious award the airport had received that morning, Global Leader in Aviation Innovation. "This isn't just an award," Jennifer said, touching the gleaming trophy. "It's a reminder that what we do here matters. Every smile, every act of kindness, every moment of understanding, it all adds up to something bigger than ourselves." The day's final event was a sunset ceremony in the terminal's central atrium. As the golden light streamed through the windows, Victoria and Robert Reynolds unveiled a new art installation, a massive globe surrounded by thousands of tiny mirrors, each reflecting the faces of those who passed by. "This piece," Victoria explained to the gathered crowd, "represents what we've learned here at Liberty. Each reflection is unique, each person valuable, each journey important." Later that evening, as the conference attendees began departing, Sandra and Lisa stood at their favorite spot by the window, watching planes take off into the darkening sky. A young family passed by, the children wearing the blue, "Where Everyone Belongs," pins that had become a Liberty trademark. "Sometimes I wonder," Sandra mused, "what would have happened if I hadn't made that mistake 2 years ago? Would we be here today?" Lisa squeezed her friend's shoulder. "The greatest journeys often start with a misstep. What matters is where we choose to go from there." As night fell over Liberty International Airport, the terminal settled into its peaceful evening routine. The cleaning crew moved through the spaces, preparing for another day of connecting lives and stories. The last announcement of the day echoed through the halls, but now it carried the weight of 2 years of transformation. As another day comes to a close at Liberty International Airport, we thank you for being part of our continuing journey. Remember, in this place, every person matters, every story counts, and everyone belongs. The legacy of that fateful morning 2 years ago had grown beyond anything anyone could have imagined. What began as a moment of discrimination had blossomed into a global movement, proving that even in the most unlikely places, humanity's capacity for growth, forgiveness, and transformation knows no bounds. Above the airport, stars began to appear in the clear night sky, each one a reminder of the countless journeys yet to come through the terminals of Liberty International, where every arrival was a homecoming, and every departure was filled with hope.